It's just kind of who I am. I want to pour into my team as much as possible, and I'm pretty in tune with my body. I can read a room pretty well, and so when I see we're lacking a little bit, you got to step up. But if we're good, you're just there to encourage and give people confidence.
Hello everyone and welcome back to WNBA Core. I hope you are all having a fantastic day. Today, I have another incredible and deeply intriguing story lined up for you. If you are a die-hard fan of Caitlin Clark, you are definitely going to want to stick around until the very end of this breakdown. Before we jump in, show your support for the channel by dropping a comment with CC 100% down below. I absolutely love seeing all the passionate basketball fans engaging in the comment section. Now, without wasting any more time, let's dive straight into today's video. There was recently a massive seismic shift across the landscape of women's basketball, and for once, it didn't take place on the court. The entire sports world stood still when news broke that Caitlin Clark had officially inked a multi-year deal with NBC Universal to serve as a special contributor for their basketball coverage. This was far more than a typical rookie endorsement deal. It completely shifted the media narrative in a way the establishment didn't see coming. Clark sent a crystal-clear message to the entire industry: she can remain the biggest draw in sports without needing the WNBA's blessing or participating in their newly formed off-season league, Unrivaled. However, while the WNBA establishment responded with their trademark icy silence, one prominent player decided to break ranks. Phoenix Mercury forward Sophie Cunningham, who has often been cast as the villain in Clark's narrative, seems to have had quite enough of the fronting. If you enjoy this type of deep dive content, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to WNBA Core. Believe it or not, over 85% of our viewers haven't subscribed to the channel yet. It's completely free, takes just a single click, and means the world to our team. Have you hit that subscribe button yet? Awesome! Thank you so much for your support. Now, let's get back to the story. Cunningham has taken direct aim at the inner hypocrisy that is threatening to tear the league apart from the inside. Through a series of actions and unfiltered remarks that went largely ignored by mainstream media outlets, she is exposing the internal politics, terrible financial logic, and deep-seated envy that are endangering the biggest economic engine the sport has ever seen. To truly grasp why Sophie Cunningham is losing her patience, you have to understand the sheer magnitude of what Caitlin Clark just pulled off. For decades, the rules for WNBA players were practically set in stone. The league's base salaries weren't high enough for a star to live lavishly year-round, so as soon as the season ended, players would pack their bags for Russia, Turkey, or China to make real money. Or, more recently, they would yield to peer pressure and sign up for league-sanctioned off-season ventures. Clark took that old playbook and tossed it directly into the trash. After signing with NBC, she will be making high-profile appearances at Madison Square Garden, during Sunday night football broadcasts, and on Big Ten Saturday night games. But she won't be diving after loose balls in a uniform. She will be sitting courtside and in studio dressed in sharp blazers alongside cultural icons like Carmelo Anthony and Vince Carter. No female basketball player in history has achieved this level of mainstream crossover authority so early in her professional career. She isn't just positioning herself as a WNBA player, she is framing herself as a direct peer to the biggest male athletes on the planet. Meanwhile, the complete silence from the WNBA's executive offices speaks volumes. They know they are losing total control over her narrative. Sophie Cunningham's recent public posture is a direct reaction to that uncomfortable silence from league leadership. The background of this entire situation revolves around the hype surrounding the new Unrivaled League, founded by WNBA superstars and Players Association leaders Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier. Reports indicated that the league went on a relentless charm offensive to land Clark, offering her over $1 million in equity shares and a contract structure mirroring Lionel Messi's landmark deal with Inter Miami. There was immense pressure applied behind closed doors. A narrative was being pushed that if Clark didn't join, she wasn't supporting her fellow players or lifting up the women's game. The expectation was that she would lend her unprecedented popularity to validate their new business venture. When Clark declined the offer and chose NBC Universal instead, the old guard faction was left deeply resentful, viewing her decision as a betrayal. But here is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Having been in the league for years, Sophie Cunningham recognized Clark's choice for what it truly was, a brilliant business move. Cunningham likely saw the inherent conflict of interest at play. When active players run a league and put social pressure on other players to join, it creates a bizarre, uncomfortable power dynamic. By saying no, Clark proved that she cannot be bought, manipulated, or intimidated. For the past year, mainstream sports media has attempted to manufacture a bitter rivalry between Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham. Outlets constantly replay clips of physical play, hard fouls, intense trash talk, and aggressive screens, attempting to frame Cunningham as the enforcer sent to put the star rookie in her place. It's true that Sophie plays with a physical, relentless edge, that is her signature style on the floor. But off the court, Cunningham happens to be one of the sharpest business minds in the league. While other veterans were going on podcasts to minimize Clark's impact or claim her skills wouldn't translate, Cunningham was one of the few who kept it completely real. During the heated debates over charter flights, Cunningham publicly admitted that Caitlin Clark was the sole reason the league finally done away with commercial travel. She shot down the fake narrative that the league was simply growing organically on its own. She gave credit where credit was due. Her latest frustration stems from watching a league that is more than happy to cash the massive checks generated by Clark's popularity, yet refuses to treat her with the basic respect she earns. Cunningham is essentially looking around the room and asking, "Are you people serious?" She sees the record-breaking television rights deals, the sold-out arenas, and the private charters, and she knows exactly whose arrival made all of it happen. This is precisely why Cunningham's reaction to the NBC News is so critical. The media wanted her to show bitterness. They wanted her to say that Clark hadn't earned a major network broadcasting role. But Cunningham refused to take the bait. Instead, her frustration is directed at the flawed system and the jealous critics within it. She understands a fundamental economic truth: a rising tide lifts all boats. If Caitlin Clark becomes an even bigger mainstream star on NBC, millions of new viewers will tune into the WNBA when the season tips off. Cunningham is calling out the short-sighted pettiness of bitter players. Her attitude essentially says, let her secure the bag, because that bag ultimately raises the bar for all of us. Traditionally, WNBA veterans maintain a strict code of silence in public, even when their peers are clearly in the wrong. Players are expected to present a united front. But Cunningham is breaking ranks in favor of basic common sense, a truly revolutionary act in the often clique-driven world of women's basketball. Let's look closer at how Cunningham's stance indirectly exposes the mean girl culture that has plagued the league. We've seen legend-level figures attempt to discredit Clark's collegiate records through misstated facts. We saw the uncomfortable snubs during the Team USA Olympic roster selection process. There has been an undeniable, "you can't sit with us" energy directed at Clark since day one. By accepting the NBC deal, Clark didn't just ask for a seat at their table, she bought the entire establishment. And Cunningham seems to be one of the few players who appreciates the absolute genius and irony of that move. While other players post cryptic messages on social media about loyalty, struggle, and paying dues, Cunningham is out here living her best life, totally unbothered by Clark's sky-high success. Her attitude highlights just how small-minded much of the surrounding drama really is. Sophie's willingness to speak out comes from her refusal to join a senseless hate train. She talks about hoops, and she talks about business, but she refuses to disrespect the athlete who is literally driving the economic engine of the sport. Money talks, and right now, Caitlin Clark's financial moves are making a massive statement. We have to address the actual numbers, because that is what is driving the jealousy Cunningham points out. The maximum supermax salary in the WNBA tops out at around $250,000. Even high-paying off-season startup leagues require non-stop physical toll, playing grueling games in Miami, risking severe injuries, and grinding through another full season without rest. According to estimates, Clark's NBC deal pays her an absolute fortune without requiring her to put any physical wear and tear on her body. She gets to sit comfortably in a production studio, analyze the game she loves, and build an iconic media personal brand that will outlast her playing career. Cunningham, who has had to grind for every single dollar in contract throughout her career, recognizes the sheer brilliance of this strategy. Her frustration boils over when she sees other players acting as if Clark owes them her off-season labor. Clark found a way to generate multi-million-dollar revenue in the off-season while protecting her body. That isn't a betrayal of the sport, it's the ultimate professional blueprint. Instead of throwing shade, Cunningham is practically telling the rest of the league to take notes. Cunningham's stance also touches on a much darker side of league politics. The Unrivaled League was created and launched by the current president and vice president of the WNBA Players Association. Naturally, there have been persistent murmurs and speculation that players faced subtle political pressure to join, as a show of support for union leadership's private venture. By turning them down, Clark took a calculated risk of alienating powerful union figures. That is a delicate, high-stakes game. Cunningham, who has always operated as an independent thinker, likely sees the glaring hypocrisy in the setup. If union leaders are also acting as private employers during the off-season, how can they objectively represent a player's best interests? It creates a messy, conflicted dynamic. When Cunningham stresses the importance of being honest, she is signaling that the public narrative doesn't match what goes on behind closed doors. She understands that Clark's decision to skip Unrivaled wasn't just about scheduling, it was about independence. And independence is something Cunningham values deeply. Rumors have circulated all season long regarding fractured locker room dynamics across the league. On one side, you have traditionalists who feel the league was doing just fine before Clark arrived. On the other, you have forward-thinking players and business-minded veterans who clearly see the bigger economic picture. Sophie Cunningham occupies a unique space in this dynamic. She is a battle-tested veteran, a respected physical presence, and a core part of the established order. Yet, she refuses to put on blinders. Her candid approach disrupts the petty echo chambers within the sport. When she does interviews and refuses to engage in generational or personal warfare, she actively undermines the agenda of those who want to see Clark fail. She is proving that you can be an extraordinarily tough competitor on the floor without being a bitter critic of it. Cunningham's actions also highlight the need to hold sports media accountable. The narrative of "Sophie hates Caitlin" has been a goldmine for major sports networks and social media highlight pages. They post clips of hard fouls completely out of context, slapping dramatic captions about "bad blood" to generate ragebait clicks. However, if you actually watch what happens after the whistle blows or look at the post-game handshakes, there is a clear foundation of mutual competitive respect. Cunningham is taking control of her own narrative by shutting down these artificial storylines. She refuses to be used as a pawn in media-driven attacks against Clark. By refusing to play the jealous antagonist regarding the NBC News, she completely destroys the media's preferred script. Outlets wanted her to express resentment over Clark getting major network airtime. Instead, Cunningham is focused on her own career and getting ready for the upcoming season, effectively validating Clark's decision, because real recognizes real. The WNBA has historically held all the power cards over its players, controlling media distribution, scheduling, team assignments, and disciplinary fines. But with her new NBC deal, Clark now possesses a platform that reaches far beyond the boundaries of the WNBA. Sunday Night Football remains the most watched weekly broadcast in American television. If Clark mentions a league issue on that platform, millions of casual fans will hear it directly. Her microphone is now completely independent of league control, and that reality terrifies traditional league executives. Sophie Cunningham understands the leverage of media power because she has personally dealt with league officiating and fine structures. Her support for an athlete's right to maximize their personal market value aligns perfectly with Clark's bold move. Cunningham gets frustrated by the outdated mindset that players should blindly fall in line with league expectations. She represents the modern era of professional athletics, bold, media-savvy, and business-focused. Seeing Clark leverage her star power doesn't make Cunningham envious, it makes her feel validated. It proves what is possible when an athlete knows her worth and isn't afraid to use her leverage. We also cannot ignore the elephant in the room. A massive portion of the discourse surrounding Clark has been tied up in identity politics and racial tensions. Critics have claimed her massive appeal is strictly demographic, while defenders argue that much of the hostility she faces is racially motivated. It has created a toxic, polarized environment. Sophie Cunningham has frequently been caught in the crossfire of these debates, with bad faith commentators accusing her of targeting Clark out of personal bias. However, by keeping her focus strictly on basketball and business, Cunningham has systematically dismantled these narratives. Her practical attitude rejects the socio-political noise. Instead of treating Clark like a cultural symbol, she treats her like a fellow elite hoop athlete. By ignoring the online commentary and focusing on competition and economic growth, Cunningham highlights the absurdity of critics who are obsessed with culture war narratives. At the end of the day, she just wants to compete at the highest level and secure her financial future, and she respects that Clark is doing the exact same thing. Now that Clark has opted out, does the Unrivaled League lose a huge portion of its commercial appeal? Almost certainly, and the organizers know it. That reality is the true source of the underlying frustration. To guarantee top-tier television rights and arena sellouts, the venture was relying heavily on the Caitlin Clark effect. Without her, it remains an unproven startup league fighting for audience market share. Cunningham's implicit acknowledgement of this reality is crucial. She understands that the financial math gets exponentially harder without the sport's biggest draw attached. When she hears fellow players criticizing Clark, it frustrates her because she knows those same players were hoping Clark's presence would boost their own paychecks. It represents the height of hypocrisy, disliking someone personally while relying on their star power to fund your enterprise. Cunningham is far too sharp to let that dynamic slide without speaking up. As we look ahead to the upcoming WNBA season, the overall landscape has fundamentally changed. Backed by one of the largest media conglomerates in the world, Clark returns to the Indiana Fever not just as a rising star point guard, but as an established NBC broadcaster. Her position in the sports world is secure, and the era of rookie hazing is officially over. She played the long game and won. Sophie Cunningham clearly sees the writing on the wall. Her refusal to join in on petty league drama is her way of adapting to this new reality. She is essentially sending a message to the rest of the league: adapt to the growth or get left behind. Those who hold on to personal grudges are fighting a battle that has already been decided. In the media's original storyline, Sophie Cunningham was cast as the antagonist, the physical enforcer, the fierce rival, and the face of the pushback against the rookie sensation. But following Caitlin Clark's monumental NBC announcement, Cunningham has evolved into something far more compelling, a fearless truth-teller. While much of the league maintains a bitter silence over Clark choosing network television over their off-season league, Cunningham has kept it completely real. She has exposed the double standards of an establishment that resents Clark's dominance while happily profiting off her popularity. By refusing to play the villain, Cunningham has proved that she isn't Clark's enemy, she is simply a fierce competitor who respects high-level business moves. Caitlin Clark has changed the landscape of women's basketball forever, and Sophie Cunningham is one of the few veterans with the courage to say it out loud. Now, the WNBA faces a clear choice: they can follow Sophie's lead, set aside personal pride, and embrace this unprecedented era of growth, or they can stay bitter and watch the world pass them by. But knowing this league, the drama is only just beginning.